Thanks for joining us at Right On Replicas, where we're proud to bring you the best scale model kit reviews on the planet.
This review is for a project that I made back in 2014, and it evolved over time into something that's, I think, pretty interesting. And so I'll show you what I did, and I think there's probably maybe enough interest that people might have to create their own thing. And I'm always surprised at how creative you folks are to come up with something that you could do with near wall size or near full size wall art, for your special place. So I came up with an idea to make a wall sized image of one of my favorite cars, and to get proportional integrity there, I just sketched out some proportions, and then I made a list of materials, went down to the hardware and brought them back. And but there was some special features that I wanted to add to it. I decided to make a rear view of the vehicle so that forward facing there was a video screen provided by a DVD player that would be viewable just over the steering wheel. And also I wanted to light it up a little bit, and so I bought some items off the internet to provide some functional lighting for it as well. So I got some 3/8 plywood, and I painted the other side to provide the color feature of the vehicle. And then I put a 2x4 frame on the back to keep it rigid, and also to mount all of the electrical and hardware pieces in behind it. Now the heart of the action here was provided by a circuit from alternating flashers that came from trafficlights.com. You can see this information for the circuit. It had a timer, a pot on there, potentiometer, so to speak, so that you could vary the intervals of flashing, which I thought was kind of important because I wanted to get it a little bit closer to like a railroad crossing, back and forth, so it kind of kept your attention without being too flashy. And I put a link in the description below if you want to go to their website. They've got other kinds of flashers and things too, but these are just kind of suggestions. You could do anything you want, especially now with LED lighting. You can power this whole thing with a few batteries instead of having to plug it in. And it kept me entertained very nicely for a few years until all of a sudden, poof, the display stopped working. I made a fruitless effort to try and find a replacement, but I couldn't really find anything that kind of fit exactly what I needed for that application. So, after a while, and actually more recently, like a week ago, I decided to make some changes. I took out the old display unit and patched the hole in the window with a piece of plywood the same thickness and shape. I then painted it a lovely windshield blue and redrew the black separation lines with a Sharpie. I decided to try and keep it simple, and you know why. Because if it ain't there, it can't break. And so now I'm going to tell you about the features and some of the rest of my thinking about this, and you make a decision for yourself on whether it's something that you might like to try. And what I'm going to show you today is something a little different. It's actually a model of my favorite car. And the reason I chose this motif, this for my project, which is a little bigger than usual. Normally I make 1/8 scale, about the biggest, but this is nearly a 7/8 scale model. Although it is fairly two-dimensional, it does have some three-dimensional features. And it's my favorite car because it's the 1952 Studebaker Commander convertible. And as you see it here, this is seen from the back side of the vehicle. And I put it together as a wall hanging, some wall art. And many of you probably have wall art for your man cave or your garage or even your living room for display. But I put this together, and it's fairly simple construction, and you can just add some enhancements to any kind of a flat object to give it a realism. And so I borrowed a pointer here as you can see from one of my friends, and I'm going to use this to point out some of the details that I put together. Now, as you can see, the lights are flashing back and forth here, and that's connected to a railroad crossing a device, a circuit that flashes the lights back and forth between the two lights. And it wasn't very expensive. It was about $30 at the time. I think today you could make it with an Arduino unit, or maybe even just put together the circuit. But what it does, of course, is then give it a little motion to the wall hanging here, and therefore a little bit of more of a lifelike presence. Now, it's made out of a 3/8 inch piece of one-sided plywood, and it's fairly light, and to give it some rigidity, there's just a 2x4 frame on the back side, which holds the flatness together on the piece that you decorate, and of course gives it some rigidity for the whole thing, and you can mount it from the 2x4s. And now I'd like to point out some of the other features. This is just a motif relief out here, and you know, for the visors, the sun visors. And I left the inset here kind of a white color so that it appears to be something that's just a standalone unit. Now the whole thing, of course, kind of looking like a comic strip image or something that Andy Warhol would have made back in the 60s, is very simple to make. It's just you know, your standard latex paints, and all of the outlining is done with a black Sharpie, and it makes it a pretty good presence and delineation for the various colors and features. Some of the things that I added here are enhancements. Like these units here are actually the tail light nacelles and bezels for the 52 Studebaker Commander, which I found on eBay, of course, along with the trunk light and the trunk key, and also this is just a standard lock and key mechanism that I use as a switch for the lighting, and the light here also works too, and then of course illuminates the 1951 license plate from Indiana, but then in 1952 they were short steel for the Korean War, so they used these little appliques for 1952 in Indiana. And another reason why I like this car is because it came and was made in Indiana, which is where I was made and came from in the same year of 1952. And this being one of the Indy 500 pace cars, that's one of my passions for modeling. And so that was the reason for the selection here. But what I'm trying to get at is you could make your own favorite. Something that you think is really significant or interesting, you can make this out of a 4x8 piece of plywood and a few 2x4s. And it's really an eye catcher. I think a lot of people might enjoy seeing something like this. The tailpipes, that's just PVC. You know, I painted them steel. And then you can see my cardboard tires here. Those were the latest thing back then. And also, this is just a makeup mirror, you know, that was cut off and screwed on there. This is the top to a candy jar, and I found a logo of the Studebaker, and I just printed a decal out of it. And the mirror, like I was going to say, that is just a standard car mirror that I cut off the housing around it and glued it right straight onto the plywood. So there you have it. The bumper is foiled like we used to back in the old days. It's just aluminum foil sheet that's been glued to a piece of thin plywood, and a little structure there, 2x4 structure to give it a little 3D dimensional feature. You see the Studebaker emblem, which you know where that came from. And that's about it for features. So I just thought I'd show you that, and I could detail some of the, the electrical stuff on the back side, but it is powered by a plug that's behind the unit there. But I thought maybe a lot of people might be interested in putting something together that had a little meaning to them. Maybe the year that you were born, your favorite car from that year, or something that you just think is really, really interesting. And so that's it for this little featurette. And I hope you have some fun and put together one for yourself. I don't know how this thing really works. Oh. Uh-oh. So, I thought I'd show you what the unit looks like in low light conditions. As you can see, we got our license plate lit up, and we've got the turn signals alternating, and it's quite impressive, especially if you have this in an interior room, so that you can kind of show off the features of it, and maybe even use it for another type of a centerpiece for one of your walls, or as I do, parked in the garage like it maybe should be. So, if you've got a jigsaw and a table saw to cut the 2x4s, you can make one of these along with some paint and a few accessories, and it's quite impressive. I hope you enjoyed taking a look at mine. And so, once again, I hope you'll build one and put it on your wall. So here's another suggestion. A lot of people actually mount their jigsaw puzzles to frames. Well, here you've got a canvas to do that with, but that's just a suggestion. There's a million ways and things you can do, and hey, if you would, send me your ideas. I'd love to hear from you. Well, we hope you liked this premium project review, and so that you don't miss any more, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can do that by clicking on the right-hand icon of any of our reviews, or you can see us on Facebook or our website, rightonreplicas.com. Thanks.